Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. It is Thursday, October 17th, and it is somehow already week 7. And I am Patrick Daugherty, joined by Mr. Denny Carter and Kyle Dvorchak. We're going to break down the entire slate, beginning with the Lions at the Vikings. Then we get the Texans at the Packers. We have the Chiefs at the 49ers, rematching 2 of the past 5 Super Bowls. And for some reason, Vegas never learns its lesson, and the 49ers are favored. Then we're going to have the Jets and the Steelers. Big changes for both those teams. Big changes for a lot of teams. We've already talked about a lot of the Amari Cooper and Davante Adams fallout, but we'll get deeper into it on the show, which we're going to get really deep into here right off the jump, guys. So we're recording before Thursday Night Football, but we've kind of got one of those apocalyptic fantasy football landscapes tonight, one of those days where people are asking nonstop questions about bub means. Stuff is going to happen tonight. Bad things are going to happen. And just for people listening after the fact, what do you think happened on Thursday Night Football between the Spencer Rattler, Bo Nix short week showdown of the century, Denny?
I was not expecting Lil Jordan Humphreys to catch 12 passes for 185 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's, that is one thing that I didn't project.
For both teams. He plays for both teams in the game on Thursday.
Yeah, I actually don't know which team he plays for.
Dual citizenship is functionally what it is.
Yeah, he does have dual NFL citizenship. And be clear that all of us were expecting Bub memes to have 0 catches on 9 targets. So
that's the classic Bub memes. That's the Bub memes. Bub memes is when you don't play him and he goes 5 for 45 and a touchdown. Bub memes with an M is when the bank examiner comes for your house.
The bank examiner is going to be questioning many. Listen, the bank examiner is going to say you have only yourself to blame if you have something riding on this Broncos Saints game on Thursday night, where there are approximately 0.2 good players playing. And no offense to Bo Nix, who I'm being told is a quote dual threat, and then I keep telling people you have to have 2 threats to be a dual threat.
This is a smash spot for the bank examiner. Really, I mean that's what we have here. He's coming for me as someone who was all in on Javonte Williams. I mean, tonight could be rough. They could build a third Spirit Halloween in my yard.
Someone on Twitter do the LeBron Hezzy compilation, but just bank examiner when these 2 teams play on Thursday night. That little hand fake he does and then he shoots it.
The bank examiner looking at his clipboard and he's like, it's like, seriously, like Devon Belay, dude. Like, come on. Like, I don't really want to take your house, but like, what am I supposed to do when you've got Devon Belay? Like,
you leave me no choice.
You have Devon Belay, quote, bags. What do you think I'm supposed to do? I got a job to do. What do you think I'm supposed to do?
Bags.
No one should ever have Devon Belay, however you pronounce his last name, bags.
Right?
Hopefully this is a life lesson for you here. Right?
Learning experience.
My Taysom Hill bags have never been down worse.
Listen, I hate to victory lap, especially about injuries. But what did I say? Also, this guy takes 1 hit and he doesn't play for 2 months.
I'm actually upset that you were so right.
No, I'm telling you, he's as Pat predicts, he's going to come back. Let's call it like week 8 or 9. He's going to score 2 short touchdowns, and the second one they'll rule him out, and that will again put him in the top 5 fantasy.
That is true. Where actually everyone is going to be kind of right here. So I tell you what, everyone was not right about was the Vikings beginning the year as the best team in football. They're favored at home by 2.5 points against the Detroit Lions, who've been one of the best teams in football. So the apparent best team, the Vikings, they come off by as they're surprising home favorites, Denny. Maybe that has something to do with Detroit losing Aiden Hutchinson, a really, really heavy blow for a Lions team that has just been one of the classes of the NFL this year. But it also has a lot to do with the Vikings being favored with Sam Darnold's sizzling start. Now, Darnold has not quite stuffed the fantasy stat sheet, but is that about to change against this road-tripping Lions team adjusting to life without one of its best players?
Yeah, I do think that Aiden Hutchinson's absence is probably going to make Lions games more fantasy-friendly. I'll get to that in a minute. Couldn't help but notice that the game total here between the Vikings and Lions has risen 3.5 points to 50.5. That's the second highest on the week. And both of these teams are pretty extreme pass funnels. The Vikings are the 7th most extreme pass funnel. Detroit is the 2nd most extreme pass funnel, only behind the Ravens. So we could have a good number of plays on both sides and a good number of dropbacks for Goff and for Darnold. So I do think that the conditions could finally be right for a voluminous pass game for the Vikings.
Might work for us.
And the bank examiner would be obviously very upset over that. But I think we finally might have one here. I will say, talking about the Hutchinson situation and his absence and the impact on this game. Detroit this season has the second lowest third down conversion rate against them. Okay, only 28%. Only the Dolphins are lower, which is weird. Yeah. And that could change without the pressure that Hutchinson provides. He's like kind of like their get off the field guy on those obvious pass situation third downs. They're seventh so far in pressure rate, and you would think that will be affected by his loss. So I think it's a good spot for everybody involved.
So yeah, just when I'm speaking to is Sam Darnold, he's been living off touchdowns, which, good players score a lot of touchdowns, but he's had more than 20 completions one time, and it was exactly 20 against the Packers in that game where they went up 28-0, and they kind of had to like fight back a little at the end. He hasn't had a 300-yard game this season. Not that makes him unique. He has been taking a pretty fair amount of sacks. So I just feel like there have been warning signs there with him, but he can come out of the bye and get reestablished after that rough start against the Jets. Just good things for Sam Darnold maybe down the stretch. Real quick, guys. Sam Darnold against the Detroit Football Lions or Brock Purdy against the Kansas City Chiefs.
Darnold.
I guess. Yeah, the environment is good. The environment in the Niners Chiefs is awful, actually.
That was my thought as well.
We'll get to that.
I have Darnold one spot ahead of Brock Purdy. Sam Darnold or Mr. Geno Smith in Atlanta, Georgia.
Geno.
Oh, come on.
It's Darnold. And by the way, if you listen to the latest Galaxy Brains, you heard me announce my candidacy for insurance commissioner of the state of Georgia.
Pat, we've also, speaking of seeding the high ground, if you listen to last episode, it seems like Denny has seeded to us the high ground on Sam Darnold, who he was the only believer in heading into the season. And we have flipped the script, and we're the Darnold boys now.
It is funny how you guys ragged on me all summer, and now you're like, oh, no, he's good. Of course he's good.
Well, don't get me wrong. He hasn't had one single impressive box score.
No, actually, like the metrics on his last start were actually frightening, and
they were bad. To be clear, I am joking about the box score thing, but hasn't been prolific in a fantasy sense. And yeah, I had been talking about he'd been taking a lot of sacks, and he faced a good defense once in the Jets and had a really. It
was ugly.
Bad.
It was real.
Ugly. So it's a big start for Sam.
By the way, Geno for me easily over Darnold.
Geno, man, we'll talk about Geno in a minute, but like you want to talk about like the empty calorie,
There's a lot of
calorie volume for Mr. Geno Smith. We'll get to that in a minute. Kyle, is this a nightmare spot for Jared Goff and the Lions pass catchers against a Vikings team that allows a lot of passing yards because they're always playing with the lead, so teams are throwing against them a lot. They have the lowest QB rating against imperfect stat, but quarterbacks have a 70.3 QB rating against the Vikings. This game is on the road. Is this a nightmare spot for Jared Goff?
Yeah, it doesn't matter whether you think QB rating is good, whether you think yards per attempt is good. I went with EPA per play in terms of passing plays. They're the best defense in the NFL at that. And as Denny pointed out, they're a funnel, but you are getting funneled into the wood chipper. They want go ahead, pass against us. We're up 20-10. We know what you're going to do, and we're really good at stopping that. They're just probably the best defense by a considerable margin in the NFL. So albeit this does look vaguely like a shootout, as Denny pointed out, the second highest total, you got to be concerned that the Lions do not want to run into the wood chipper, and they have a really good backfield that could maybe keep it close without having to drop back Goff 30 to 40 times, because that seems like the nightmare scenario for Jared Goff is they know you're passing and you're Jared Goff. Don't love that. So, I still think we want to rely a bit on the game environment, which looks really good. But when you subtract how much the backs are going to get, I don't think even in a good game, he looks like a QB1, because it has to be a good game against a bad defense for me to really feel good about Jared Goff.
Yeah, Brian Flores does not strike me as a man who will respect a Jared Goff play fake either. No. So we'll see what happens there. It may be a really interesting spot for Mr. Jared. Denny, is it a really interesting spot for Ty Chandler? I wrote Ty Chandler season ? Aaron Jones has mysteriously resumed practicing. They've acquired Cam Akers. I don't think Aaron Jones is going to play in this game, but he is practicing. We have to mention that. Let's say if Aaron Jones does not play, though, is it Ty Chandler season, Denny?
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I did not know that Aaron Jones was practicing. So, there was no way to find out. That was
I caught that. Believe me, I didn't do the news roundup. I should have, but I happened to catch that one out of the corner.
Thank you.
Earlier.
We had this on the news report yesterday. He told reporters he was going to practice. You guys got to catch up on a little site I like to call rotoworld.com.
I should have occasionally checked that one when I'm not blurbing it. So Ty Chandler, I mean, if he gets the lead back role, it's a good role to have. Minnesota has been slightly below or right at their expected drop back rate all season, so it balanced in that way. Vikings have averaged 29 rushing attempts per game. That's the 12th most in the league. And Aaron Jones has a 16% target share. So if Ty Chandler were to inherit that role or something close to it, that's very fantasy friendly.
Ty Chandler, listen, man, kind of need you real bad.
I need him worse than ever. Worse than anything.
Guys, we are the Bank Examiner All-Star podcast. I need him too.
Me attempting to cross up the Bank Examiner with a devastating dribbling, poking the ball away and going down. The Bank
Examiner
just
slap it into your shin. You slam it into your shin. I dive for it. We collide heads. Denny's trailing behind the Bank Examiner. He just throws one down on him.
The Bank Examiner dunks wearing a suit. It's very unbecoming of him, to be honest. Gibbs, Demont, check in, Kyle. What's going on here with these guys? They're both top 10 in our PPR points per game.
Yeah, they're both really good. I just think it's a
yeah, they're good. All right, we can move on. Yeah, they're good.
I wasn't sure when your sentence was going to end. It ended at one point. I was like, wait, here's one more. Wait,
what do you want me to say? They're good. Whatever. Who cares? Yeah.
I mean, that is the check-in, is that they're both pretty good at football. I will say, sort of an interesting nugget is that we're still not getting the true Jahmyr Gibbs breakout as a pass catcher.
No.
David Montgomery is top 5 in yards per route run. Gibbs improved compared to his rookie season by a meaningful amount, but he's still 26, and he's not dominating the routes either. So when you get him getting less than half the carries, he gets well less than half of the goal line work. He's stuck in that like RB 10 to 16 range where he's extremely talented. In a different situation, he's like an RB 2, 3, 4 overall, that is. But they've made it extremely clear ever since the start of last year, since extending David Montgomery a week or two ago, I think, that they want David Montgomery to play this role, and he has given them no reason not to do that. He's really good as well.
Bears, turns out, we're just giving away dimes for nickels in David Montgomery and Darnell Mooney. The Bears should have considered having a good offense one time before Caleb Williams arrived in town. The Ravens and Bucs are two of the most exciting teams in football without much in the way of weekly question marks, Kyle. They're not a very exciting podcast discussion, but let's begin with, is this an eruption spot for Chris Godwin and a banged up Mike Evans against a Ravens pass defense that has just frankly been terrible?
Yeah, I think at this point, they're just vaguely all eruption spots for Chris Godwin. He's been operating as the quick timing, get the ball out fast type of receiver, and that has been perfect for the way the Bucs want to play. They're a pretty pass-heavy team and find themselves in shootouts pretty often. The get the ball out in less than 2.5 seconds, easy completions game has always been what Chris Godwin's really good at, and that's been the emphasis of this offense so far. On passes that have come in less than 2.5 seconds, Godwin leads the NFL in catches, first downs, and yards by a pretty wide margin. And that's the perfect type of game for a shootout, a high volume type of game where they're playing a really bad Ravens defense. Mike Evans is banged up, probably contributing a little less than usual. They're all good spots for Chris Godwin, but like you pointed out, this is an especially good one. And the Ravens have gotten beaten up by the quick passing game to a degree that almost no other team has. They've given up the second most yards on passes in under 2.5 seconds. They just really aren't a coherent defense right now.
Why are the Ravens favored, by the way? Can anyone explain this to me? Like, does no one will take the Bucs seriously? I mean, very much including me every week. I got the Bucs. Like,
no, I mean, Bucs are gonna lose here. Come on.
Yeah, I feel like the Bucs at home, I feel like, should be favored in this game, just to be honest. But,
I mean, we just watched Baker Mayfield throw 3 picks and kept it close for a half.
Guess what the QB win-loss says? The QB win got the dub.
They're getting away with it big time.
Yeah, Denny, that includes in the backfield. Rashawn Tucker is apparently somehow a thing after Rashad White misses a game once. What is going on in this Bucs backfield after last week's Sean Tucker weirdness? Kind of just in closeout mode.
Yeah,
it has some of our friends very, very frothy on Twitter. What's going on?
I mean, can't blame them. It was quite triggering to see Bucky Irving walk into the RB1 role, the lead back role with Rashad White down, and Sean Tucker is the guy who has the huge day. I mean, Irving still had a nice day, but not what we thought. Anyway, so Todd Bowles comes out and says we have a 3-headed backfield now, which is it's the worst thing I've ever heard.
It's also just not true. Like, it's not. He's trying to be nice. I mean,
and then you have Fox Sports' Greg Allman, former Bucs beat writer, says that Rachaad White is still the RB1, which whatever. I don't believe that. I mean, no disrespect to Greg. He does a good job covering the teams, but I can't imagine that that's the case. Tampa Bay has the third highest pass rate over expected. I think it depends on who gets the most pass catching work, like who has the most involvement in the passing offense here. Just for last week's purposes, Bucky Irving had 27 routes to only 11 routes for Tucker, but Tucker out-targeted Irving 3-2. I can't make heads or tails of this thing. And, but, look, you picked up Sean Tucker. You're excited. You can't play him. Am
I incorrect? Wasn't most of the Tucker stuff in the fourth quarter? Like,
I don't most is maybe a bit generous.
Fourth, but wasn't it mostly in the fourth quarter?
A lot of his first touchdown came on a check down that
he had multiple touchdowns.
Yeah,
oh my god!
The first one was in the first half. He was, to be fair, you're sort of in the right ballpark where in the first three quarters, Bucky Irving played like 70% of the snaps. He doubled up Sean Tucker in routes. He doubled him up in carries. But I will say the fourth quarter includes 2 drives for the Bucs. The first drive, they weren't they were salting it away, but it was not what I would call garbage time, and they were still splitting work. Then the final drive, which was 6 carries for like 50 or 60 yards. All of which were Sean Tucker, and it was 6 consecutive carries. I'm going to throw that drive mostly out. They were up 17. There was 4 minutes on the clock at the start of the drive. He goes 6 for 50 or 60 and punches one in at the end. That drive, I would say, unless they get up 17 with 4 minutes left again, I don't think we see that type of drive. But before that, he was still mixing in and playing extremely well, as evidenced by the touchdown you did not know about.
No, I did not. And I want you to describe 6 for 58. That sounds like bank examiner season, man. Like if you put like a big wafer bid on this guy.
He had to have been already probably over 100 yards from scrimmage at that point, I'd imagine, or if not, he was close.
It was a good game. I think he was the RB2 overall for the week.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff there from Sean Tucker.
He played really well. He earned himself maybe a 1B role if White doesn't return, but I don't know if he earned himself much of a committee role if White does return. I don't like Denny. I don't know if I buy the 3-head committee thing.
This game will be really, really telling because they're home underdogs against the defense that is really bad against the pass. So, if Sean Tucker can still be relevant this weekend, then that's going to be a thing. Kyle, is Zay Flowers trending towards wide receiver 1 status, or is he still this 2-game script dependent? And what's the latest, real quick, with Mr. Mark Andrews?
I don't care about Mark Andrews. I get that he had a good game last week. You would need, at this point, you need to show me a lot of games in a row in which he earns a lot of targets and produces a reasonable fantasy production for me to believe that he's back to the old Mark Andrews, or even in the sort of broader fantasy conversation, a tight end 1/top 15 tight end. For Zay Flowers, wide receiver 1 might be a little bit generous. He's 11th in the NFL in target share, 14th in total targets because they don't pass a ton, and he's 45th in air yards. That's scam adjacent. I think he's pretty good at football, but being that low on the air yards list, despite earning as many targets as he does, shows his limitations as a pass catcher, and he only has 1 target in the end zone. The Ravens don't throw a ton when they're in the red zone, but 1 is still a really low number. The tight ends are out targeting him. Rashad Bateman is out targeting him, specifically on end zone targets, that is. That makes him both game script dependent and slightly low ceiling if they're just not going to go to him on touchdown scoring opportunities.
He should have considered catching 1 pass in the second half last. I know he had 9 for 132 in the first half. What could I possibly be complaining about? But when you do that, I'm expecting 15 catches. Zay Flowers. We're expecting a lot of points in Atlanta, Georgia, where the Seahawks and Falcons throw back to the glory days of yore as they meet up in a dome with a game total north of 50. Football as it is supposed to be played, especially according to Denny Carter,
yes.
who wants every team to have a dome. We've been loving the Seahawks' pass game volume. The results have been another story, Denny. First, we'll get to the volume. Will we get the volume in Atlanta, and what will we get the results from the Seahawks?
So if there's ever a spot where we're not going to get the volume, it could be here because the Falcons are they want to be run heavy, and B, they are a run funnel defense. And so they might actually invite the Seahawks to establish it a little bit. As of right now, headed into week 7, Seattle is 9% over its pass rate, over its expected pass rate. That leads the league. 3rd in total plays, 1st in pass attempts. It reminds me a lot. This offense reminds me a lot of late era Matthew Stafford in Detroit. Okay. Just constant dropbacks and nothing doing. So Geno Smith regularly has 30 to 35 expected fantasy points, he gets 16 to 20. I guess that's what I'm saying. You can live with that. And then once in a while, he might actually meet his expected fantasy points, guys. That's the hope. The Falcons are run funnel. Like I said, opponents of Atlanta have a 50% neutral pass rate on the season. They are collectively 3% below their expected pass rate. The total is 51, which is up on the week.
Quite high. Very curious. You're telling me that we're not going to get yards.
I'm skeptical that I'm not saying this is a bad environment, but I would say like Vikings, Lions is probably better. But look, as far as fantasy goes, you're starting everybody. You're starting everybody who you would normally start. And on the Falcons side, that might include Tyler Algier.
Enough with that. Kyle, we heard Denny's piece, speaking of Tyler Algier, on the Falcons' offensive approach and their backfield split earlier this week. What is yours? Is this team just going to be run heavy when they can get away with it? And Denny suggests they might be able to get away with it against the Seahawks. What is the latest with as the Bijan turns?
Yeah. How many teams in the NFL are not run heavy when they can get away with it? I think even our analytics darlings coaches, the ones who we love the most, if you tell them you can get away with running the ball 30 times this game, instantly, that is the first thing they will do. And in fact, if you can quote, get away with it, do whatever you want. So I will say, yeah, they're just like any other NFL team that if you give them opportunities to run the football, they're going to do just that. I propose this. It's let's say it's 1st and 10. You come out of halftime, 1st and 10, first play, and you're up 14. Which teams are passing it on that play? First down, second half. It's like the Seahawks who play in this game. Maybe the Bengals.
The Chiefs.
They don't pass the football anymore.
Well, not right now, but when the Chiefs are running right, they do that.
All right, so 2021, the Chiefs would have. It's been a long time.
All right. Yeah.
No teams are passing the football whenever they don't have to. Some teams, the Seahawks, maybe, but not.
There are some teams that your point is valid, but there are some teams way more into it than others, and there's a lot of signs that the Falcons are more into it than others. Was where the question was going. Especially there's not a lot of teams who care about getting 2 running backs to 100 yards rushing, as the Falcons almost did last week. And do you think that it's going to be, when the game is in doubt, do you think they're going to be focused on the run against the Seahawks?
If the game is in doubt, I think they'll be passing it. I think they're a team that if they have a lead late in a game, they will probably, they have 2 good running backs. I vaguely understand why they're doing it. You should probably just try and score more points if I'm being honest, but I understand the logic of running the football with a lead. So I think if this game is actually in doubt, if it's a close game, that's how we foster a shootout. I don't know if it's going to be in doubt. G knows this game.
It sounds like I will not have your vote for Georgia Insurance Commissioner.
No, I will vote for you, Pat. Seattle is quietly a very bad rush defense, so I think the Falcons will take advantage of that.
Denny, real quick before we move on, Lockett versus JSN, another as the world turns. Tyler Lockett, the undeadest zombie to undead zombie in recent fantasy history.
Slightly different profiles, similar opportunities. So JSN and Lockett have the same air yards share in the Seattle offense. JSN has 9 more targets on the season, so really it's just the same. Tyler Lockett, 9.5 air yards per target. JSN is down at 7.3. So you know what you're getting. You're getting a little more high variance profile with Lockett, but these are the same guys basically. As far as fantasy goes, the way they're used on the field, totally different.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, the similar output, different usage. That actually does strike me as the correct Tyler Lockett. JSN take. The Texans and Packers square off in Green Bay with a total that is high, but not as high as we would like. It's in the 47.5 range last I checked. I'm not sure if it's moved in the past day. Now, that's because both these offenses have spent the year not exactly underachieving, Kyle, but not scoring as much as we predicted. Now, let's just start with Houston. Might we finally get a shootout in a stuffed stat sheet? Because every week I'm like, man, if the Texans were playing well, this one would be a shootout. And then it's never a shootout somehow. Are we going to finally get a shootout in Green Bay?
Yeah, 47.5 feels right. I agree that when you get 2 quarterbacks of this caliber, you'd think this is a 51.5 total, and I might still bet the over. But both of these teams are relatively balanced football teams. The Packers, if anything, have been a little more run heavy, even when looking, obviously, I don't think we used the Malik Willis games as really any indication. But even over the past 3 weeks since Jordan Love has returned, negative pass rate over expected, below league average on early down pass rate. They're not a complete run team, but I don't think they're willing to completely open up yet. Vegas kind of agrees with that. Maybe if these teams go back and forth a few big plays, we could see that. But the big play threat on the Texans side, it's not in this game, won't be in the next 2 games as well. So I don't know, 47.5 feels right. Feels like we should have a higher total, and yet Vegas will win this one again.
Yeah, it's a classic, like, kind of complaining, like first world complaints, I guess, like 47.5, man. Like, I mean, it's high, I guess. But why is it not 50?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it not 50.5? Denny, did we see anything different from the Packers last week where we saw 4 passing touchdowns for Jordan Love? Still only 32 attempts, maybe because the game wasn't truly competitive, but do we see a different offensive approach? Like finally being more aggressive through the air and with their passing approach?
Yeah, a little bit. They really turned up the dial on pre-snap motion, and that was part of that was giving Jordan Love like the leeway to change the play at the line of scrimmage, which I think is going to be a factor going forward for the Packers in a good way for everybody involved. In week 5, when Jordan Love returned to the lineup, Packers were 8% below their expected drop back rate. In week 6, they were 3% over. That's a pretty big difference. Houston is something of a run funnel, and I feel like the Packers are a little bit run curious. But Josh Jacobs has been not very good, so I do think that it'll be balanced, maybe a little bit pass heavy here for the Packers.
Yeah, Josh Jacobs is struggling for both the Packers and my teams. Kyle, Joe Mixon's not struggling. 2 healthy games, 200-yard appearances. Is this guy just like a set and forget RB1 at this point?
Last week, understandably, they really didn't give him anything close to a full-time role. He played less than half the snaps, saw less than half the carries. In the first 3 quarters, because they did blow out the Patriots, it was more of the same. He got a little over half the carries, but they really were limiting his workload. I think the good thing is this team should score a decent amount of points. Not a full shootout, but it is, like we said, it's a pretty good total still. It's a pretty good offense, even if they haven't. I know. It's the best we're going to get, though. We're not 47.5 is the 4th highest total of the year.
Say it's good for 2024. It's
good for 2024. And sort of the Texans offense has been the same way. I guess, they end up looking like a good offense at the end of the day, but they could be great. They quite haven't gotten there yet. But in the context of what that offers their running back, it's a pretty decent fantasy output, even though I do think his role last week left a lot of meat on the bone. It was his first game back. Understandable. I think we should project his touches to go up going forward, especially as a cut of the pie.
PFF Bobby is a fraud. Denny, what is the state of the Packers receiver core? A lot of injuries. Jaden Reed nursing an ankle. Dontavian Wicks nursing a shoulder. They both seem like they have a chance to play, but really crowded group, especially when you throw in Tucker Kraft, 5 guys trying to get targets.
Yeah, and that's reflected in the target share. Romeo Doubs, you look at your fantasy score last week and say, oh, why didn't I play Doubs? Man, he caught 2 touchdowns. But thing is, he saw 4 targets, and 2 of them were amazing throws from Jordan Love that happened to be Doubs touchdowns. So Romeo Doubs only seeing a target on 15% of his routes this season. That's not good. Christian Watson, 15.2 air yards per target, which is really deep. It just means that he's a downfield volatile option. He's been targeted on 14% of his routes. For all the talk in the offseason about Christian Watson's role will change or something, that hasn't happened at all. And beyond Jaden Reed, you don't have much here that you can bank on.
Christian Watson, maybe because of the health, but yeah, I mean, there's always going to be the, health question mark.
Yeah,
he went to the lab and solved the hamstring. He wasn't counting on the knee.
Yeah,
the ankle. I think he had a high ankle sprain.
That's right. The lowest high ankle sprain in history. After a mistake like that, it's a good time to take a short break. We'll be right back after this. We're counting down to the tip-off of the NBA season, and for those of you drafting your fantasy team, get a jump on your competition with a free Rotoworld basketball draft kit. Get all the rankings, stats, and player profiles you need to dominate your league all season long. Go to NBCSports.com/hoopskit to download today. So we got Wimby on the cover of our draft guide. Probably a better decision than some of the stuff we've been doing on ours. Just put the guy who's amazing. Put Wimby on there instead of Tony Pollard. Who's on the cover of ours this year? Oh, Jamar. Yeah, Chase. He's going absolutely nuts.
That's pretty good.
We're back. We're never been more back. The spiraling Tennessee Titans traveled to Buffalo as 2-score underdogs, Denny. We were on the air when the Amari Cooper trade went down on Tuesday. Now that you've had time to gather your thoughts, what do you believe his ceiling is with Josh Allen and the Bills? I know he was horribly, horribly inefficient with the Browns. His yards per out run was barely over 1. Not a good situation. But hopefully that's just about what was going on in Cleveland. What do you think is going to go on in Buffalo?
Can we just real quick take a minute to appreciate how funny it is that the Bills had one successful ground game last year against the Cowboys, and they decided to change their entire franchise over it? I mean, like you got to have a few. I feel like if there's like a string of games where you're like, oh, we can just establish the run and win easily, and we don't need Stefan Diggs, we don't need a good receiver. We can get by with Khalil Shakir as our wide receiver 1. And so they pulled the plug on that experiment because their season, I mean, honestly, like outside of like heroics from Josh Allen, their season's spiraling right now. So
they're 4-2, and they are already like massive favorites to win the AFC East because Dolphins are dead. Patriots ended the season.
They're going to the playoffs.
They also successfully established it against the Jets in a victory.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's like, I think it sucks that they don't want to score 40 points a game because you can when you have Josh Allen, but they're doing all right. They're like 7th, I think, in just total points per game. They're going to run away with the AFC East. They'll probably get a top 3 seed. I doubt they'll get the 1
Curious,
seed.
Denny.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so they're fine. And they traded for Amari Cooper, who has always dominated air yards, especially, but also targets once in a while. And so I think that he's just going to step in here as like the alpha wide receiver 1 because no one else has taken on that role. So Keon Coleman right now leads the Bills with a 20% air yards share. 20%. That's very low for a guy who leads the team. Okay. You have guys like Terry McLaurin north of 50 or whatever. Okay. So in Cleveland, Amari Cooper had 49% of the air yards before they traded him. It's a pretty regular thing for him. So I think that he is going to keep seeing that big chunk of air yards. He's going to lead in targets, and the quality of the throws are going to get way better from Josh Allen compared to the most washed quarterback in history, Deshaun Watson.
I think what we might see with the Bills is like an overall consolidation where they do consolidate, maybe is more run heavy, especially now they saw a good game out of Ray Davis. Like, seriously, it's hard to overstate how long the Bills have been looking for something like that. Like, they spent so long trying to make Zach Moss a thing. They spent so long trying to make Latavius Murray a thing. Like, they especially want this 2-back backfield bad. Even when James Cook was their only back, they would kind of dabble like, well, what if he wasn't? And like they would get another back. And now Ray Davis finally looks like maybe he could be that guy where I think we could see more run heavy approach Denny. But then Amari Cooper just utterly dominate the passing game volume because these other guys are not up to the challenge.
Well, I mean, they have been run heavy, and I think they'll continue to be. But my question about Ray Davis, and this is for either of you guys, whatever, if they like him so much all of a sudden, why didn't he see the field for the first 5 weeks? Like
I kind of feel the same way as Denny.
It's classic rookie bull bleep. Basically, the coach, I don't know, like he hasn't shown it in practice the way we want him to. Like, I don't know, dude, like what's he supposed to do in practice?
Oh, okay, so he's basically being like, he's never played.
Yeah. I honestly wait a minute, to be honest.
Yeah, but I mean, also like it was a good game, but 20 for 97. Fine. I don't
know. It's a pretty good game when the other team knows like that's just what you're doing. And like 20 for 97 that's getting close to 5 yards per attempt too.
Yeah, it was a good game. It just didn't strike me as one where like there's no way to put him back. We can't. It was good. And he had a long catch.
I guess an elite defense, elite pass defense more than elite run defense, but I don't know, man. I think they're going to be impressed by it. This is again a team who spent the better part of half a decade like, well, what if Zach Moss works for us this time? And then he never ever did. But do we have anything left to talk about? Hey, we have a lot to talk about. Yeah, Kyle, well, how big of a problem for James Cook is Ray Davis was our next topic here.
I'm a little less concerned than you are, but he is good.
Yeah, two things. They want the power back so bad, and they never ever cut James Cook loose, like ever. Like truly ever.
He has 2 20-touch games this year already.
He's not anywhere close to 20 carry games for one. They refuse.
Doesn't he have a 20 carry game already?
He has one. I'm saying he's been like mostly more like the 11 to 12. 19. Here's his carry counts: 19, 11, 11, 9, 20. So, but it's been more games where he's had 11 or fewer than he's had like 19 or more. They do not like cutting this guy loose.
I assume it was his incredible game against the Cowboys that spurred on this entire movement towards the run from them.
I can't even remember who really. Yeah, it was 179. Yeah. But then why didn't they commit to him after that? His carry counts after that were 20, 16, 13, playoffs 18, 18. They do not want to commit to this guy.
Well,
they never
wait
have.
a second, Pat. Wait. 18 carries. I will take that from my running back every single week. That's a lot.
I'm saying, especially if they're good. He's been a classic. Like, why don't they give him more work? Because it's not 18 most of the time. Most of the time, it's like 14 or 15.
Those are all good numbers. I like all of that. That's all pretty
good.
He's
had 5 games this year, and he's had more than 11 carries twice. This is not someone they've been cutting loose.
I feel like you're a James.
I mean, how many times has Ray Davis gotten on the field this year?
He gets on the field one time and immediately matches James Cook's season high for carries. Is kind of the point I'm making.
Well, that's also what happens when it's him or Ty Johnson.
Yeah.
They spent the whole year talking about how much they love Ty Johnson. And immediately Ray Davis easily blows by him.
From an actionable standpoint, can you start Ray Davis this week? No.
Yes. I agree. No.
Well, no, he's in the 35 to 40 range at RB. So really you're
congrats on your loss. Move to 2-5, brother.
Okay, so you feel just as good about James Cook as you did before his injury as you do now?
I said I'm slightly worried. I do agree that it's better when the backup doesn't look good. Will not concede that this was a good development for Ray Davis. He made splash plays through the air. He looked good on the ground, but it is strange that they only gave him the ball when they were absolutely forced to.
It's not strange. Coaching staffs are dumb. It's a rookie. They loved him all summer, and then they just wouldn't feature him. And then it's he hasn't done it. And so because you haven't given him a chance to do it. And then
I feel like we're looking at a 3-touch game for Ray Davis.
I also think it would
No. At least 6 to 7 touches for Ray Davis in this game. They're 10-point
also
home
useless.
favorites. Yeah, they're 10-point home favorites. It's probably gonna be over 10. Actually.
Oh shoot, they're 10-point home favorites. All right, we're getting 12.
Okay. All right, fire him up. There we go.
Exactly. Come on, guys.
Not a bit though. He might actually get 12 touches.
No, it is actually not. But we'll see. I'm just saying there are alarm bells going off for me with James Cook, where they've always been overly reluctant to feature him. They are totally obsessed with a 2-back backfield in Buffalo, even when it never worked. And then every year in Week 14, whatever, make Devin Singletary the feature back, and it would work way better. They are possessed by the idea of a 2-back backfield.
All right, final stance, Pat. What fraud con level are we on?
It's the lowest. The lowest still.
Okay, I agree.
Still the lowest. Yeah. Denny, is Will Levis even more cooked than Deshaun Watson?
I look powerfully into this, and there is an argument, I think, for Will Levis being worse than Watson. So as far as EPA per dropback goes, only Jacoby Brissett's, poor Jacoby Brissett, by the way, and Deshaun Watson have a lower dropback EPA than Levis. Levis is taking a sack on 10% of his dropbacks. That's the 3rd highest rate in the league. 27% of his pressures end with a sack. Again, 4th highest rate in the league. He's so he's killing drives with these sacks, right? And he's killing drives with horrible turnovers and just harebrained decisions. But the thing is, and I think Kyle pointed out this last week, all the metrics say he's doing all right passing. He's
really?
Yeah, he's above his expected pass rate or completion rate, I should say. He's top 10 in on target rate.
No, he's really low in EPA per play.
He's top 10.
Because he makes terrible,
right?
Like Denny said,
catastrophic mistakes.
His mistakes outweigh the sort of down to down.
I see what you're saying.
Stuff. The mistakes just outweigh it by such a hilarious margin.
So he actually, he's terrible. Also, I feel like he's real close. He's real close.
No.
To being what Callahan wants, which is just
he's
a check down merchant.
He just faced the worst defense he's going to face all year, and he had averaged 3.5 yards per attempt.
I get it. Look, this guy's not built for the NFL, obviously. So it's not. I'm not trying to back him, but it is strange. You don't usually see that sort of profile where it's like EPA disaster. Also, really good passer.
Yeah. Okay. I think that is really interesting. But
yeah.
But one of our friends, our former coworker, one of the always one of the haters of the year, Nick Minzio, said he's a UFL product, Will Levis. So
kind of does look like that.
Nick always loves to win hater of the year.
he is the hater to end all haters. It's true.
Is it real quick? Tony Pollard RB1 season. They're 10-point road underdogs, the Titans, but no touch competition. Should be on the field a ton. Should be catching a lot of passes. Do we have any qualms with Tony Pollard RB1 season?
It's tough when your team sucks this bad. 10-point underdog's crazy, but
that's bad setup.
It's a very bad setup, but he has been incredible this year. We should have put him on the magazine this year. We should have saved it for one more year.
Funny
because he's over 4 yards after contact per carry. That would be his highest mark since his rookie season. His rookie season was slightly better, but we're talking about peak Tony Pollard powers. We were just a year early. And if we had someone had told us, maybe the television when I watched it, that he suffered a catastrophic lower body injury, maybe we would have waited a year. But he's legitimately playing incredibly good football, and frankly, in a relatively bad circumstances. So
I know that's what's making it extra impressive. Is this has been a horrendous offensive environment.
Yeah, even though I honestly didn't draft him much this year because I was relying on last year's data a lot. Just really good to see him rebound to be the Tony Pollard we put on the cover of the magazine.
Really, really is. Not really good to see is anything the Cleveland Browns do. The Browns, they're giving up on their season, Kyle. The road tripping Bengals will be looking to put them out of their misery in whatever the Browns stadium is called now. The story for the Browns, I don't even know. They sold the naming rights. The story, it's NBC Stadium. Comcast Field. I love it. Oh, absolutely love it.
I love that stadium.
The story for the Browns, Kyle, is the expected return of Nick Chubb. Where can he slot in our rankings for his 2024 debut?
I don't like to give this question. It's purely a vibes question. Like, there's no sort of data we can rely on this. One thing, Jerome Ford doesn't look like he's going to play. He left last week with a hamstring injury. Doesn't appear to have practiced on Thursday. We're recording this basically as they practiced. Didn't practice on Wednesday. It's just Deonta Foreman, who's looked pretty sluggish as a Brown so far, and Pierre Strong in this backfield. I guess maybe Nyheim Hines could come back as well. I know they don't want to give him a lot of touches. You would just never realistically give your running back coming off of a really bad, scary knee injury in his first game many touches. Also don't have a ton of choices. So I don't know. What do you project him for? Maybe 12 to 14 carries?
Which is probably on the higher end of what some people are expecting. My take is they've kind of babied him along. Baby's not the right word. They've made sure that he's ready basically before activating him. And when you do that with a player, that means you're wanting them to come back and just do what they do.
You play it cautious for a long time so you can be a little more aggressive after the caution period ends. So I think that probably gets him in the middle RB3 range. And,
that's right.
Have fun. Play him, sure.
Yeah, that's right. I'm right. By the way, it's Huntington Bank Field. Also, apparently, they're moving to the Cleveland suburbs.
I did know that. I knew that.
Dome.
Awful. Absolutely awful.
Amazing.
Actually, honestly, a complete disgrace. Moving out of the city, complete disgrace. Moving into a dome, complete disgrace.
Gotta get
putting stadiums in the suburbs, man. Listen, I live in the suburbs. Stadiums do not belong in the suburbs. It's absolutely awful. Denny, post-Amari fallout for the Browns skill corps.
I did want to mention that Browns beat writers are saying more and more that the team could be run heavy and rely more on play action going forward. They really ratcheted up the play action season high last week against whoever they played.
I watched it and I have genuinely no clue. I think maybe it's the Eagles.
It was the Eagles. Right. The Eagles barely beat the worst team in football, and then Nick Sirianni got excited about
Fought the fans.
So the Browns could go run heavy going forward. So just keep that in mind. They were 6% under their expected dropback rate in week 6. That's the first time all season they were under their expected dropback rate. I think that's notable. Jerry Jeudy would be, the presumed wide receiver 1, as bleak as that sounds. I'm trying to say that without crying. 20% target share of the season, 32% air yard share over the past 2 games, guys. I had to get something going here. Over the past 2 games, Jeudy has almost 40% of the air yards for the Browns. So, hey, he's got that going. David Njoku still seeing a target on about 22% of his routes. Could do worse. I do feel like Njoku will just be forced to see a bunch of more targets with Cooper gone.
Jerry Jeudy absolutely cannot wait to average 3 catches for 52 yards as the number 1 receiver. And David Njoku's not moving well, by the way. I noticed last week. He's moving very poorly side to side.
I have to say, though, if you have Jeudy for some reason, if you have Jeudy on your team,
maybe this game isn't for you, buddy. Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah, you have to look pretty strongly into playing him. I don't know, man.
You kind of do. I'm giving him a probationary week. We'll just see, man. Kyle, what is the latest on Chase Brown versus Zach Moss? This remains the most confusing situation in football to me.
I mean, the fumble does complicate things because if I was a football player, I wouldn't fumble, but I guess he did. So, no, I mean, it is going to make it sort of a difficult situation to understand how the team views it. But I honestly don't think it's that complicated. Chase Brown is better than Zach Moss, and he's proven that over a bunch of games, and he continues to get more work. Last week was a season high in snap share, a season high in route rate, a season high in target share. He got over half the carries for a third week in a row. And it wasn't just like he made marginal improvements to his route rate and his target share. He ran over half of the routes, which is something that they have been reluctant to let him do. And I think that's especially telling on how they view this backfield is even, I'd say, like maybe the more technical stuff you could call it, the more running back ball knower type of stuff. Zach Moss is good in pass pro. He knows how to sit in the zone and wait for Joe Burrow to get pressured. A dump off saves the play. They're even letting Chase Brown get on that kind of thing. So maybe we just get reset because of the fumble. But I do think last week was clear evidence that the more and more they see of their backfield, the more they say, let's get Chase Brown involved.
The Chiefs and 49ers rematch several recent Super Bowls with Vegas. Again, never learning their lesson and for some reason installing the Niners as narrow home favorites. Denny. I have no idea.
It might be that this game's so early in the season that the Chiefs aren't really trying yet.
It is true, Denny. Check out the most recent Galaxy Brains for why the Chiefs might not be trying in this game. But while you and Kyle attempt to "Where is your God now?" me on Patrick Mahomes, Denny, I ask you this: where is my God now? Any chance the approach is different coming out of the bye week? I argued as much on Tuesday. I know, and I do see better things ahead for the Chiefs offense, but is that for real? Is that real?
I don't know. I'll read you their recent drop back over expected numbers against the Falcons in week 3, -1%. Against the Chargers in week 4, -4%. Against the Saints in week 5, -1%.
At least they lost all those games, so they'll start passing.
This is something we have not really seen in the Mahomes era. They're fine with just establishing it. He's league low in air yards per attempt. Maybe
that's
they try
the one that hurts. That's the one.
Yeah, I know. Right. And maybe they try to get a little creative coming out of the bye, and get Xavier Worthy loose a little bit. That'd be cool. But I do feel like no matter what they do here with this offense, it all just gravitates back to Mahomes being checked down Mahomes. And I wouldn't be surprised here. I mean, the Niners are a run funnel. The Chiefs seem increasingly okay with running it.
Wow. Yeah, that was pretty bleak. I do think looking for a big post-by rookie bump for Xavier Worthy, someone they just desperately need more involved anyway.
Yeah.
Xavier Worthy is one of the players I'm watching most closely this week, Kyle. But we're also watching Juju Smith-Schuster very closely. How real was that 100-yard game? My take on the Juju 100-yard game is you just see the difference, even with a guy who's totally washed, between an actual established, savvy NFL player running these routes with Patrick Mahomes as opposed to Sky Moore. But what do you think is happening with Juju?
It's probably a good analysis. Is he, quote, more talented than Sky Moore? Both of whom are just – Sky Moore is never good. Juju just seems to have completely lost it. He's maybe not more talented, but he just knows what the offense needs and what the offense.
He actually knows how to play football, at least.
He knows how to play football. It doesn't matter if he's physically all there at this point. He knows how to play football and has pre-established chemistry with his quarterback, neither of which Sky Moore ever had. And it, as you pointed out, it just clearly showed up. He had a 24% target share the last time we saw this team. He was targeted on 28% of his routes and understandably had an extremely low ADOT, like basically every Chief does, of 6. But that's right in that Rashee Rice range. I don't think he is subsuming the entirety of the Rashee Rice role. I think that falls on the shoulders of Travis Kelce pretty heavily now. But I also think Kelce can't take it all. He was still doing some stuff, and Xavier Worthy does not profile as that kind of player. It's disgusting, but it's kind of Juju's in the Rashee Rice role.
I have Juju as the wide receiver 29. How does that strike you?
That almost feels low. Really? He's getting a lot of targets from your God.
Yeah, I mean, easy targets too.
I have him one spot behind JSN, who's playing a similar role.
Yeah, they are playing very similar roles. I think I'd take him over JSN, honestly. I don't
as much of the Chiefs defender as I am. It just, I don't know, the Juju thing, that's going to be hard to maintain.
Oh, man, they're going to have to send you some new talking points.
Yeah, please. Yeah, come on, man. I'm on the air right now. What do you think? You thought I needed him after the show? That's me yelling at my chief source off camera. Sorry. Not, just in case people on the on the audio version are wondering what's going on. Denny, 49ers are kind of boring right now. Anything going on there?
Oh, man. Yeah, a little bit. So Brock Purdy leads the NFL in air yards per attempt at 9.8. And that is something I did not expect to say this season. I think what's happening is I was actually listening to the Dominique Foxworth show, and he shed some light on this situation. He said that the simulated pressures that defenses are doing, this is all the rage now.
You lost me.
Fake blitzes. Those simulated pressures were made to like throw a wrench in the gears of the Shanahan machine, right? Because the Shanahan machine has spread across the entire NFL, for better or worse. The idea is quarterbacks, are just an extension of the coach, and they don't have to actually do anything. But Purdy is doing stuff, like he's actually changing plays. He's changing calls.
That was his first mistake,
and so he really does have a higher variance profile, as does this entire offense now, because he's going deep more often. You would think that it would be good for Brandon Ayuk, but that's not the case so far. And it is better, I think, for a guy like George Kittle. So that's kind of what's going on. You know the rest, but they're not run heavy. They're usually in the bottom 3 or 4 as pass rate over expected. They're at 12 right now. So that's important.
Important to note Jordan Mason's health situation. He's practicing. He's limited. Can't really read too much into that because he was announced as questionable and came back last week, handled 1 carry, and got re-injured. So it just could be like a re-injury situation with Jordan Mason. That's a classic. Keep it locked to Rotoworld.com. Even if Jordan Mason plays, which I think he will play, could be seeing a lot more Isaac Garundo than we had been coming into week 6. This week's little shootout that could is the Panthers' trip to, quote, Northwest Stadium, which is apparently where the Commanders play now. Man, these names are just getting worse and worse and worse. Again, unless it's Comcast Field, then we love it. Kyle, is this a volcanic eruption spot for Jaden Daniels, or will the Seas, as they're being known, be able to run the ball too easily against the Panthers?
They're called the Seas. That was
a joke. That's a dumb joke by me. Sorry. Commanders.
Please no. I miss football team, if I'm being honest. What a cheeky.
I do too. Well, as you know, I put a tribute to the football team in the show sheet. I put WFT.
Oh, true. I like that. Please keep that for the rest of the year. I like that. The only thing that's going to hold Jaden Daniels back is the fact that they're 8-point favorites, and the teams just unanimously say we can just kind of run against the Panthers. They're not much of a threat. Their defense is very bad in all facets. But as I pointed out earlier in the show, when teams can run, they generally run. So I think that's the only problem, that we get to 200 yards, 2 touchdowns and a rushing touchdown in the first half, and then they just kind of take the air out of the ball. But in terms of Jaden Daniels continuing his historic rookie efficiency, yeah, great spot for that. They've got bottom 5 in EPA per play allowed. They're giving up the 2nd most passing touchdowns, despite not facing a lot of passing attempts. So it's an efficiency game at minimum for Jaden Daniels. Maybe they can still keep the pass heaviness up if the Panthers hang in there just a little bit, but at worst, it's a good efficiency game. Great.
But it could be Brian Robinson's coming back, but maybe he's not fully healthy. Maybe that could force the Commanders into more pass happy game script. And so, Denny, on the other side, is the Commanders' defense bad enough for the Panthers to actually do their part and maybe hit the over? And what I thought was the highest total of the week, I don't know if it's changed or not, 51.5.
I think it is.
Can the Panthers and the Commanders' defense do their part and actually bringing points to this 2024 NFL season?
I just want to say I'm skeptical of this point total as well, because these are 2 teams that are fine running the ball, and these are 2 defenses that are not very good against the run. Both of them are very pronounced, I should say, run funnel defenses. I'll have them in the defense funnel defense report on Friday. Anyway, I do think the Panthers are going to try to keep it on the ground here. Will they have success? I doubt it, but should be a good spot for Chuba Hubbard. I mean, you're starting him, of course, with Jonathan Brooks still not back. Brian Robinson, I think it's a smash spot for him, even if he's only getting 12 to 14 carries, something like that, because he has that injury. But I'm a little off the pass catchers here. Deontay Johnson. Did you mention Deontay Johnson? Did I miss it?
No, but it's on the cover of my receiver article this week.
Yeah, he missed practice on Thursday.
Yeah, they've been managing that ankle.
So just something to monitor.
Something to monitor. Kyle, any Commander skill guys we care about beyond Terry McLaurin or no? I mean, Zach Ertz, whatever.
I know you have to mention Zach Ertz and feel bad about it, but he is top 10 in route rate, target share among tight ends, He's the PPR 13, tight end 13, I think. Hasn't scored a touchdown yet. The moment he gets in the end zone once, he'll jump like tight end 9. He might not. I mean, I wouldn't throw him touchdowns if I were Jaden Daniels, but you gotta at least treat him as a low end tight end one.
Denny, is Jatavian Sanders a thing, or is this over now that Tommy Trimble's back from his concussion?
Yeah, it might be. I just wanted to tell folks, look, I was the Shaq meme. I was not familiar with Jatavian Sanders' game. As far as last week goes, his usage was great. He ran a route on 29 of 40 dropbacks in week 6. He had a scammy 6 ADOT. Panthers have dropped back on 63% of their plays since Andy Dalton took over. So if he maintains that role, it's pretty good, honestly, from a streaming perspective. If Tommy Tremble is back in the fold, then it's over.
Well, I don't understand why they would feature Tommy Tremble. Like, this is the kind of thing where I feel like this is easy for a coaching staff. Like, is Tommy Tremble good? No. Did the second Tommy Tremble get hurt? Jatavian Sanders immediately produce? Yes. 3, how do I budget this?
Right. Someone help me with my family.
Someone please tell me how to do this. With the Jacksonville Jaguars stranded in London, England, the Patriots visit the enemy lands of King George III as 5.5-point underdogs, Kyle. Are Pats like Pop Douglas and Hunter Henry suddenly becoming more interesting with Drake Maye under center? I did not realize I was making my King George III joke. I forgot that it was literally the Patriots. I'm going to England. Thank God someone's doing something about this.
Yeah, we saw, albeit a real rocky start from Drake Maye, and sure, call it garbage time if you want to, but he was just willing to push the ball past the sticks, push the ball down the field, had an explosive play rate over 10% last week. Brissett's explosive play rate, I think 6 or 7 coming into getting benched essentially. So yeah, not perfect, but trying. And frankly, we just didn't see a lot of that from, and not to discredit Jacoby Brissett, but he just really probably wasn't physically built for trying at football anymore, which was strange because he started a bunch of games. So I do think that, albeit we are going to take our lumps, especially with Hunter Henry and Demario Douglas, they're at least not the boom bust type of profiles. I think at the boom bust profile, someone like Jalen Polk, maybe he'll pop up for a big game every now and then, but he's hard to trust. But the down to down production coming between these two players and an improvement in the offense overall, Pop Douglas, like, fringe wide receiver 3. Maybe you keep him in the wide receiver 4 range, but he's seeing really good volume. And Hunter Henry, honestly, another, tight end 1, huh?
No, stop. No.
Pat hates Hunter Henry
because he's the worst player in the league.
I don't get it, man. Like this offense is going to be so much more fun now that Brissett's out, and you're still like Hunter Henry. No, you can't play him anymore.
Well, I mean, he's played in situations, but he's played in actually good situations and never been good. This is the problem.
I think he was good in the good situations.
What? Sort of. I think he's got like a career high 8 touchdowns, maybe career high 800 yards. That was like 7 years ago.
Are you not taking 8 touchdowns from Hunter Henry?
The point is that's not happening this year. That was when he was actually good half a decade ago.
He got 6 touchdowns last year, and that team was terrible.
Hold on. His career high for yards is 650 in 2019.
I don't care.
Can we stop?
I don't care.
Can we honestly stop with the Hunter Henry stuff?
I'm not saying you're starting him over Kelsey. He's
curious.
He's out there. By the way, Pop Douglas, top 10 in ESPN's open score. Pretty cool stuff. And folks might say, well, that doesn't account for quarterback play. Well, I don't know what it accounts for, but he's getting open. Amari Cooper dead last in that metric, by the way.
Denny, has Evan Ingram's return wrecked the floors of Brian Thomas Jr. and Christian Kirk?
Not entirely. I mean, look, 10 targets for Evan Ingram is going to wreck a lot of things for everybody in this offense. But like the double-digit target days for Christian Kirk, those are not coming back. His slot usage did not change in week 6 with Ingram back in the fold. His pecking order did, however. Brian Thomas dropped an easy touchdown last week. Pro Football Focus graded him 87th out of 94 qualifying wide receivers in week 6. He had a bad day at the office, as the Zoomers will say. So Zoomers have never been in an office, of course. No. But and neither have I for many years. Anyway, I think Thomas will be fine. Kirk is done. Ingram is like the entire engine of this offense, unfortunately.
This is a ultimate keep it locked on Rotoworld.com for the backfield health. Ramondre Stevenson not practicing. Seems unlikely to return. Did he make the trip to England? I'm assuming he probably did. The Jaguars, Travis Etienne is getting unlimited practices. Total mess of a situation. So just keep it locked to Rotoworld.com. Hopefully a better week for Tank Bigsby this week, regardless of whether or not Travis Etienne plays. The Davante Adams-less Raiders visit the Rams as touchdown underdogs. I don't know, man. I don't know if the Rams are that good. Where the story, Denny, will be the healthy return of Cooper Kupp, or so we thought. I wrote that before his situation got murky. Seems actually unclear if he's going to return this week. If he does return, is it a Nick Chubb situation where we can assume it'll be his normal role and we can fire him up as a wide receiver one? And what would that do to Jordan Whittington's recent bump in value? Just what's going on here with Cooper Kupp and the Rams pass catchers?
Yeah, I'll try to be quick with this. Cooper Kupp, you have to start him. If he plays, he just soaks up all the air yards, all the targets. He's such a focal point in the red zone as well for Matthew Stafford. So you're playing him. I think Jordan Whittington might be able to survive with Puka Nacua still out. Whittington profiles as more of the big body guy who can block. And that's what Sean McVay likes as his wide receiver too. And so I think he'll stay on the field quite a bit here. And he'll still have some usefulness in deeper formats.
Cooper Kupp, it was limited on Wednesday. We're just going to have to see what happens there. The left behinds for the Raiders. How high for Jacoby Myers if he plays? I cannot remember if he's practicing yet or not. The post Davante Adams fallout. Again, we keep talking about the post Davante Adams fallout. We've already seen it for 3 weeks where he was faking an injury. So what's going on with the Raiders without Davante?
Yeah, we saw 2 games of Jacoby Myers playing without Davante Adams. Had an elite target share. I think it was right around 30%, over 40% of the air yards. It's true wide receiver one stuff, and they have a very much we throw to 2 guys and no one else situation. The other guy just happens to be a tight end, Brock Bowers, who is near the top of the league in targets per out run, target share, and he's so elite in both of those. His targets per out run, if the season ended today, would be the best over the past 4 seasons. He just really is an immediate de facto sort of wide receiver one, or at least a 1B to Jacoby Myers. Play him every single week, and I don't think there's really another pass catcher you need to concern yourself with.
We'll be right back after this. This Sunday night, it's a showdown of 2 teams vying for position in a crowded group of AFC contenders. Catch Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams back in action together as the Jets take on TJ Watt and the Steelers in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Coverage of the game begins at 7 p.m. Eastern only on NBC and Peacock. Yep, NBC guys got the narrative bowl this week. It's the trippiest game. It's the Jets and the Steelers. Sunday Night Football. Well, what could be better, Kyle? Denny got a crack at the Davante Adams question on Tuesday, so now it's your turn. How is this going to shake out between him and Garrett Wilson? Is Davante Adams a wide receiver one? Can Garrett Wilson still be in the top 18? What do you think is going to happen?
Top 18 seems fair. I will say he was basically just coasting on volume. He just hadn't meet the efficiency marks that we thought he would. Understandably, it's a relatively inefficient yards per route run guy, given what we think his talent was in his first 2 seasons. Lots of Zach Wilson starts, lots of nobody quarterbacks. You can't really hold that against him. You can hold it against him being outside the top 40 receivers in yards per route run this year. I get he's facing a lot of bracketed coverage. He's getting the team's best corner. A lot of guys do that and play better in terms of the overall efficiency metrics than Garrett Wilson. ESPN's open score doesn't care for him. Their overall metrics see him as one of the worst receivers in the NFL. PFF's receiving grade has him top 20. And I think that's probably, we talked about guys like Chris Olave, who could be Amari Cooper. Good, never great. We never really mentioned it for Garrett Wilson, but we maybe should have, that he could just be pretty good, but never be a true elite wide receiver. Davante Adams has been that guy, and we know how much the Aaron Rodgers connection means. Allen Lazard was by far the worst receiver in the NFL last year. He was so bad that they healthy scratched him at the end of the year, and despite having no financial way to get out of his contract, they really thought about it, and he immediately became relevant under Aaron Rodgers. That connection means a lot, and the best connection in football of my lifetime is Davante Adams to Aaron Rodgers. So I think it's a pretty immediate, I'm projecting Davante ahead of Garrett.
So real quick, Ryan Day is coming to your house to take your badge and your Buckeye from you. Your Buckeye for declaring Garrett Wilson the next Chris Olave. My take is I think gave to Denny on Tuesday is that hopefully Garrett Wilson can stay in the top 18 because hopefully it's just a role that's going to immediately produce better efficiency. And Denny has kind of talked in the past though. He I almost have to relearn to play the receiver position because he's so used to these low quality targets, whether it's been Zach Wilson or Aaron Rodgers. But so he's going to have to thrive in a new role because hopefully he is going to start immediately getting more downfield stuff and taking some of that from Allen Lazard. The doomsday is that Allen Lazard just keeps his role. And Garrett Wilson's like he's like a Wandale, basically. He's like Wandale to Davante Adams as Malik Neighbors. That could be like a nightmare outcome for Garrett Wilson. Hopefully he starts getting some more action down the field, Denny. Any new thoughts on Russell Wilson's insertion under center for the Steelers? Are they still claiming this might not happen? I think they finally – but the Steelers were so mad that someone scooped them on the quarterback thing.
Yeah.
For 2 days, Mike Thomas said, well, I don't know.
He said
apparently read it in the paper. Yeah.
It's all minutia. That's what it is.
Yeah.
We don't care who starts a quarterback. It doesn't matter. I mean, look, you have Justin Fields out there saying I should have played better. I could have played better. So it's probably over for him. Anyway.
He did not play well.
It changes the complexion of the Steelers offense in this way. Justin Fields has accounted for 29% of the rushing attempts. So that'll go to Jaylen Warren, maybe to Najee Harris. Jaylen Warren, by the way, impressive. 7 carries for 0 yards in week 6. Really great stuff from my best ball guy. Anyway, so I mean, what I mean, more pass attempts, slight uptick in pass attempts, slight uptick in rushing attempts for the running backs, but otherwise, this offense stays pretty grimy.
Denny just alluded to it, Kyle. I mean, is Jaylen Warren waiver wire fodder at this point, or do we just have to keep sunk costing this? There's no point in cutting him now because surely he can't be any worse, right?
I mean, he definitely can't be worse in terms of efficiency. He hasn't been particularly efficient. We just haven't seen much of him. It's a pretty small sample. Last week, definitely didn't get the ball enough to where you can reliably start him. He did get both a higher snap share and a higher percent of the team's carries than in week 1, in which they were easing him back from the hamstring injury. So this easing back was less easy. That's what you want to call it. They were a little more confident in his health coming back from a second injury, but he's at best the number 2. I don't think he's got a strong chance at pushing for a 1B status in the next week or two. I'd like to hold on to him, but I think there are plenty of teams that can't afford to do that right now.
Muddling along in an underachieving division, the Eagles and Giants have a sleepy 42.5 game total in the Meadowlands, Denny. A.J. Brown and Davante Smith both got home for fantasy managers in their Week 16 returns. Was it actually a positive day for this Eagles passing attack? It was a tough Browns defense. It's kind of a Giants defense. It's eerily similar almost to the Browns defense, at least so far, and how they've been performing on defense. What do we think about the current state of the Eagles passing game?
It's up and down. I mean, it was up last week mostly due to 2 long completions to AJ Brown, but you can't hold that against anybody.
That's what they do. Long completion to Davante Smith as well.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, so Jalen Hurts finally in the positive area in completion rate over expected, 10.2 air yards per attempt, which is a big leap from when the offense without Smith and Brown. I wanted to mention if Dallas Goedert is out, then Calcaterra, Grant Calcaterra ran like
folks. I believe they opened Albert Okwuegbunam's practice window. This time it counts for my dynasty rosters, folks.
Dear God.
Sorry. Go ahead with the route.
No, it's okay. So he ran about 90% of the routes after Goddard's early exit against Cleveland. He caught all 4 of his targets for 66 yards. You could do worse, I think, from a deep league perspective.
That was a weird one, Denny. I almost just thought that was kind of like we had some Goddard stuff in the game plan, and we got to keep it. And now if Goddard's out, that maybe Grant Calcaterra won't.
Sure. Yeah. Definitely. Calcaterra could.
Not that you were saying that, but
0 targets.
That thought went through my mind when you were talking about it. So, but I mean, I put him in the top 24 at tight end.
I think you had to.
Yeah. You kind of do have to. So we'll see what goes on. Dallas Goedert does not seem like he's going to play in this game. Does Devin Singletary seem like he's going to play in this game? Kyle, he was limited last week and then didn't play. Latest update on Devin Singletary versus Tyrone Tracy.
Feels like we've been getting more this year. Players getting in limited practices, sitting out one more week. I describe it as ramp up periods we've had, which I think is probably just a more thoughtful way to view players' health. It's like, hey, the moment you can get back onto the practice field maybe isn't the moment you should get drilled by a linebacker.
No,
so
it never works.
I feel like we've seen that more. Yeah, I know. So maybe it's just purely anecdotal, but I feel like we've seen that more. And I do think the second week back practicing, he's pretty likely to return. Still limited, but I do imagine he'll get back on the field. I really want to say that Tyrone Tracy has done enough to really cement himself as the starter. Singletary, I know Braxton could come back this week. Giants beat reporter Art Stapleton says even if he does come back, he thinks Singletary is more in a version of the Eric Gray role to start the year. You know, the Eric Gray role to start the year. The Eric Gray role from last week, as in the clear number 2. I know. We need 5 more minutes of sermon from you because I need some Tyrone Tracy in my life. I don't want to go that far. I do believe that, you know, we should look to a Giants beat reporter and figure out what they're doing with their backfield. We should also be cautious with our fantasy teams and jumping to any big conclusions. I would probably take that information into account and say it's more like a 50-50 in Singletary's first game back, but I think it could be a pretty big deciding game on they give both of them some touches and they ride the hot hand, but not just for this week. Like Tyrone Tracy, prove it. And that's it.
As someone with Devin Singletary bags, I feel like I'm gonna be eating baked beans around a fire in the desert.
It sounds like you need a bank examiner lecture on that one. I should have seen that one coming. And where he's so disappointed, he's actually going to let you keep your house. Because, come on, young man, I thought you knew. Goodness, you have a family.
Oh man, when I saw Tyrone Tracy in that first start, I was like, "Well, I'm dead."
Another Spirit Halloween in your backyard. Because listen, there's demand for a 4th. You might not understand why. There needs to be so many Spirit Halloweens in one block radius, but there's demand. Yeah. That's what you don't get. It's like Starbucks. Denny, Wan'Dale Robinson, what's his outlook if Malik Neighbors returns as expected?
By the way, we have some news here on Neighbors. He practiced in full on Thursday, and he has a groin injury now. So we have that going for us, which is nice.
He practiced in full though. Like, so was the
Kyle? That could just mean sometimes it means you get injured at the literal very end.
No, I know. That's why I was asking.
That's not good.
Do we have an update?
That would be very bad, Denny. Like Kyle's saying, it would be great if he came into practice with the groin and then practiced in full.
Exactly. That's he's like, hey, I tweaked my groin, but I can play through it. Whereas the final snap, his groin explodes. That's bad, but could still be a full practice. And I need to know which one it is.
We'll find out.
I can't deal with another week without Neighbors.
No.
Anyway, Wan'Dale Robinson, 38 targets over 4 games before Malik Neighbors suffered his concussion and missed the next 2 games. Robinson and Neighbors combined for 65% of the Giants' targets from week 1 to 4, which is pretty crazy, but pretty cool, honestly, for fantasy. And a very cool, very nice scammy 4.6 air yards per target for our guy Wan'Dale. Keep it going. Keep that PPR engine motoring along for Wan'Dale.
Please, God, no more Wan'Dale. Too much. Every Wan'Dale target is a policy failure.
He stole that from me, by the way.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Oh, wait, did I?
Yeah,
because I made that joke in our group chat on a different.
No, it's because I tweeted about Tyler Algier a few weeks ago. So you subconsciously, but it's because there's a lot of policy failures.
I'm so upset that you. Why won't you give in to Algier?
Because he's terrible.
Oh.
Bijan is good. It's more. I hate what it says about NFL coaching staffs. You got the only reason you drafted him is because he's the 3-down guy. But because the other idiot insisted on doing 2 backs, just like whatever. The NFL coaches, doesn't matter how good they are, they just do whatever the last guy did. It's the Duke Johnson syndrome, I call it. And he's a pass catching back. Can't ever be a 3-down guy. It's like they refuse to change the roles for running backs. And because Arthur Smith decided Bijan couldn't play all 3 downs, I was like, we have no choice. Like, we got to have 2 guys. And it's letting good be the enemy of perfect or whatever. Like, yeah, he's good. It's a shame that he's not having a bigger role, Tyler Algier. Guess who he's not better than? The other guy. And so you can't, like, this. I digress. Denny. You never want to digress. The Chargers.
One day. Go ahead.
No, the Chargers are getting around 2.5 points on the road against the Cardinals in one of the worst Monday Night Football games of the year so far, Kyle. It's only on ESPN Plus, by the way. Denny noticed a more pass-happy Chargers approach in Week 6. Is it something to this, or is it a one-off?
It might be something to it, but it's a situation where we have not a large sample. Actually, frankly, if we look at the entire history of Harbaugh, we do have a large sample. We have that. We have a smaller sample this year. Coming into last week, they had a minus 10% over a pass rate over expected. It was +2 last week. That was legitimately good. And a lot of it came on early downs where first down defense probably expecting a run from this team, not prepared, and they end up passing. Really good strategic insight. We haven't seen a lot of that this year. So I will not give them credit for it until they do it many times in a row, is what I'd say.
That seems like a very reasonable take, but I just feel like they are going to have to. Even Harbaugh's like, all right, dude. Like, I've seen enough of Justin Herbert at this point, but like, I should probably pass a little more. And just wonder how much of it was about that summer foot or ankle injury.
Yeah, I mentioned on Tuesday's show, but just real quick, the Chargers led the NFL in early down neutral pass rate last week, which is just crazy because they were 31st in that metric coming into the week.
By the way, we have someone, this is not a joke. I was trying to find a Malik Neighbors update on Twitter, and it's that we have someone listening to the show live has already made a quote graphic with the bank examiner from It's a Wonderful Life, and with the quote, the bank examiner is in a smash spot.
Yes, his name is Brad. He's a great follow.
This is who people wonder where the origin of the bank examiner. It's a Wonderful Life. This is where it comes from. Brad knows ball. Kamani Vidal season ? Kyle. Oh no, wait, Denny. Cardinals pass catchers. Yeah. MHJ sits.
Right, and I would guess that he will. He suffered a concussion last week. Trey McBride is going to see a ton of targets. He's already leading the team with 25% target share. He's seen 25% of the air yards, which is a lot for a tight end. Michael Wilson would be next in line. Our guy Greg Dortch is down nightmarish.
Down
just really awful stuff from Greg Dortch this year. So it's probably just Wilson and McBride.
That makes sense. Yeah, Kamani Vidal got everyone excited, Kyle. It did coincide with a new career high for carries for J.K. Dobbins by 8. How excited can we be about Kamani Vidal finally getting some run and very limited work, looking very impressive?
Yeah, you sort of in the Ray Davis range of I'm excited, but you can't play him this week. He had 4 carries, 2 targets. He took one of the targets for a long touchdown, but was clearly just playing a true backup role. I think the hope for people who drafted Kamani Vidal is that J.K. Dobbins' efficiency after 2 really strong games has just fallen off the map. He's averaging 1.9 yards after contact per carry, 0.09 missed tackles per force per attempt. Dreadful numbers. And over the first 2 weeks, it was really good. 4.8 yards after contact, a missed tackle forced on a third of his carries. We're just not seeing that version of him. The offense has been in some weird spots. They've been missing both of their tackles in one of those games. I think they're both back last week. Quarterback in and out of the lineup for a week or two. So, there's some reasonable excuses to be made for him. But the more and more data we get recently is saying that those first two games were probably a mirage.
It's weird though, because everything you said is true, but then they gave him quite literally by far the biggest workload of his entire career last week. So, but that was before they knew what Kamani Vidal could do in a regular season field. So maybe that was all they needed to see. It's maybe one to keep an eye on. Denny, it's one more week of the Dolphins' endurance test as they head on the road versus the Colts' awful defense. At least we think it's one more week. Now they're trying to act cagey about if Tua will actually return in week 8. But who are we firing up following the Dolphins' bye week and perhaps before Tua's return in week 8? Which Dolphins do you still have any faith in?
I guess you just got to start Tyreek just because of his role in the offense. But again, I think Kyle actually mentioned this in his 32 stats, which was that the Dolphins have been massively run heavy. I think 11% under their expected pass rate since Tua's injury. That puts them as basically the run heaviest team in the NFL since that time. So they really have no choice but to keep doing that. And hey, you know what? This week against the Colts, it could actually work. The Colts, of course, being horrible against the ground game by every metric. If Devon Achane plays, he's coming off a concussion. If he plays, then Jalen Wright is not playable. If Achane sits, Jalen Wright becomes, I think, very interesting alongside Raheem Mostert. Last time we saw the Dolphins, Wright was very good on limited opportunities. I think 3 rushes of more than 10 yards on 13 carries last time we saw him.
Seems to be every indication Achane will play. And by the way, this will have no utility whatsoever to our listeners, but I have to play Alvin Kamara over Achane tonight, right?
Oh, for sure.
Do you?
Oh, what? You get crazy, man. No. Look, I'm sorry. That was too strong. Why do you have to do that? Because only one of these guys is going to see 12 targets, and it's not Achane.
It's the yardage bonus league. It's the distance scoring league.
Also, distance scoring, and you've got the fast man.
Also, that's why I got him. But yeah, he's not doing that right now.
He hasn't done much of that.
Achane mid. All right, can we finally?
No, we can't finally.
No.
Speaking of mid, Anthony Richardson, Kyle, what's going on with the Colts quarterback situation? Or they have not. It's Thursday afternoon, so maybe they have done this by now. They have kind of refused to come out and just point blank say Anthony Richardson is starting. People have taken the win healthy thing, like, oh yeah, he's still a starter. You don't ever want any qualifier when someone's saying the starter. And win healthy as a qualifier, they could still play games with that. But it does seem like Anthony Richardson probably is starting against the Dolphins, right?
Yes, it does seem like he's starting. I bet pretty strongly that he does. Like last week was, I'd say, a pretty clear. He could have played if it was a playoff game type of deal, or if they didn't have a backup quarterback who was competent. A lot of teams just don't have the luxury of waiting till their quarterback is fully healthy. And it's ultimately what the team needs to do as a directional franchise move. Joe Flacco isn't the future. You need to find out if Anthony Richardson is the guy or not. I think he's playing this week. And sadly, that's really not good for anyone except maybe Alec Pierce. Alec Pierce did have at least one good game with Joe Flacco, but man, Richardson loves that Alec Pierce ball, and that's about it. He just has not really taken any steps as a passer outside of 20-plus yards downfield. I still think you're kind of playing Josh Downs because he's so incredibly good at earning targets. I think,
too, honestly, they might just force the Josh Downs thing, even with Anthony
I hope they
Richardson.
do. Josh Downs is forcing the Josh Downs thing. He's got
like
a 30% target share. He leads the NFL in targets per route run on at least 100 routes. He is earning targets with the best of them. A little scammy, but he's the guy that they should go to on short targets.
Real quick, Alec Pierce did not practice Thursday, so keep an eye on it.
And it's never been more over.
Well, it'll be 80 Mitchell season.
80 Mitchell, a little interesting.
Trey Sermon seems like he's gonna. I think he practiced Thursday, didn't he? Trey Sermon versus Tyler Goodson. I know. Just take us out on the Colts backfield.
Yeah. I mean, 18 carries for Sermon last week, and basically nothing from a fantasy standpoint. Goodson is seeing more passing down work. You're hoping that Sermon sits and maybe Goodson gets in there. He would be somewhat interesting as a scam, but Richardson doesn't really throw to running back. So the whole thing collapses when you take Joe Flacco out of the equation. I feel like he'd have to be pretty desperate to play either Colts running back.
The whole thing, of course, being the American experiment.
I mean, that too, it all hinges on millennial Joe
Flacco, Flacco. We're a nation adrift when Joe Flacco is not. We're a show. The show's over. The show is over. Gonna end the show now. Really, really good stuff from Denny and Kyle. Really good stuff from them all over the website. Kyle's 32 stats. Kyle's start 'em, sit 'em dropping Friday. Denny's regression files. Denny's funnel report on Friday. My rankings are live and being updated constantly between now and Sunday morning. Denny live Q&A at noon Eastern on Friday.
Yep.
Check that out. Check it all out on rotoworld.com, including the latest injury updates on all the players we just mentioned. So for Denny and Kyle, I'm Pat. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with you soon.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.